I'm joined by New York Congressman Steve Israel. He is the chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, which is kind of the long way of saying that he's in charge of trying to take over the House next year in those elections. Congressman, thank you for joining us. We had some jobs figures that came out this week. Unemployment, the jobless rate did come down. But when we look at the larger picture of what's going on in the jobs market, we see that there's only about 63% labor participation. We see that 8.2 million workers are involuntarily working part-time. And we also see that many of these jobs that are being created are low-wage jobs. Is this the kind of economic picture that you can sell next year?
Well, what we have to do is have different priorities than the priorities that House Republicans are giving us right now. In their relentless attempts to obstruct the president, to obstruct Democrats from solutions, they're actually obstructing Democratic growth. Candy, I had the best answer to your question yesterday. I had a town meeting in Oyster Bay, and one of my constituents, a guy named Brooke Dixon, said, "Congressman, I'm trying to start a small business to create jobs. Why can't those members of Congress do what a small business has to do? Why can't they listen to the customer?" I'm hopeful that in August, House Republicans will listen to the customer and choose solutions rather than obstruction. If you listen to the Republicans, my final point, if you listen to what the Republicans are saying, they're going to come back in September and double down on obstruction that hurts the economy, continuing to repeal the Affordable Care Act. They've done it 40 times. They're going to do it again. And now they're talking about shutting down the government unless they get their ideological objectives.
Congressman,
let me think there are better priorities.
Sure. Let me say that probably the customers of some of these Republicans are quite different than the customers at your town hall meeting, because it's a pretty diverse country. But I wanted to ask you about Obamacare, because we had the head of the IRS was up on the Hill, and he was asked about his own health care program in comparison to Obamacare, and here's what he said.
I'd prefer to stay with the current policy that I'm pleased with rather than go through a change if I don't need to go through that change.
This guy was appointed by, because he's the acting IRS commissioner. This can't be helpful.
Well, I can't speak for him. I can speak for me. As a member of Congress, I'm going to go on the exchange next year. I'm going to shop for my insurance in the marketplace. By the way, in my state, New York, they've announced the exchanges. Premiums are going to go down 50%. So I will be on the exchange pursuant to the law. I'll tell you what I will not do. I will not agree with Republicans in repealing the Affordable Care Act and putting insurance companies in charge of insurance, in charge of health care. I will not give insurance companies free rein to tell a woman with breast cancer that I represent that her breast cancer is a pre-existing condition. I will not do that.
Congressman, let me bring in our roundtable here. Archer Davis, he's a former Democratic congressman from Alabama. I'm sure you know more than others that he switched to the GOP over a difference in economic policies, among other things. Anita Dunn, she is former White House communications director for President Obama. Alex Castellanos and Donna Brazil, both are CNN political commentators. Let me just extrapolate what we've just heard from Congressman Israel, and that is that the election next year, barring some big deal, breakthrough, and the economy goes booming, is the economy would be much better if the Republicans just weren't standing in our way, but vote Democratic. Yes?
Oh, I think that's what the congressman would love to have. But if you go out there and ask in America, do you think Congress is so unpopular because they've not done enough or because they've done too much? It's too much. They've put the country in tremendous debt. That was a consensus. They've retirement plans, Social Security are all bankrupt, Medicare, all these things. So we actually want Washington to do more. Washington isn't spending and taxing enough. If that's the Democratic message, it's not going to work.
I think their message is you're standing in the way of Obamacare, you're standing in the way of more jobs.
Well, that's what they'd like it to be, but there is another side.
Right.
And there is, but I'm sure Alex will be shocked to hear that I disagree with him.
First time.
You know, and Candy, I think it's an important issue. I think the conventional wisdom, for example, has been that Obamacare, as a 2014 issue, potentially hurts Democrats. If you look at what's happening right now, Obamacare is hurting the Republican Party that has an enormous split between those who say that they won't fund the government past September 30th if there's any funding for implementation, the Ted Cruz wing, and then people like Tom Coburn, and who are actually now being accused of being too moderate. And, you know, at the end of the day, the economy's only going to grow if serious people will sit down and work together.
Let me jump in for 1 second, Candy.
Yeah.
You know, the irony of this recovery is that it's exactly the kind of recovery that when I was a Democrat, we used to complain was a Republican kind of recovery. And here's what I mean when I say that. If you're an American who's doing very well, frankly, this recovery isn't pretty good for you. If you're someone whose income is primarily derived from stocks, if you're someone who owns a company, your profits are up. A lot of companies' profits are up. But if you're a middle-class American, if you're a working-class American, this recovery has not been terribly good for you. And that's the irony of it. Barack Obama and the Democrats have to go into 2014, frankly, making the kind of case that when I was a Democrat, we say, well, this is these Republicans.
Well, Congressman, I want you to know I hear you, but I'm going to, Donna Brazile, for some reason, is uncharacteristically quiet here, so I'm going to draw her out.
I'm listening.
She's much smarter than me.
Well, look, I'm in the choir here, and I'm just listening to the other congregants, but the truth of the matter is that Democrats are going to campaign on an economy that is still recovering from the greatest recession since the Great Depression. We're going to campaign, I believe, on the fact that we're trying to end this sequester, which is stalling economic growth, and we're going to campaign on the fact that Democrats have pro-job growth policies. We're not going to sit around and wait for the Republicans to continue to put brakes on the economy at a time when middle-class families are struggling.
One thing we can't agree on, I think, is that Republicans have never been very good at playing the shut down the government card. It has actually never helped. We're going to hold our breath until you, the voter, turns blue. Is not good political strategy.
Right, which is probably why it's not going to happen, but it's a great sort of thing to hit Republicans.
May I?
Yes, Congressman, go ahead.
Thank you. So to these points, look, we're not going to campaign on the fact that the Republicans are chaotic and that the Congress is broken. We're campaigning on the fact that their chaos and the broken Congress is hurting the economy. They left for a 6-week recess. They couldn't even pass a highway bill. You don't pass a highway bill, that's fewer contracts for highway companies. That's lower paychecks for highway workers. They couldn't pass a farm bill based on bipartisanship. That's a tougher deal for rural economies. And so the fact of the matter is that their chaos, their extremism is hurting the economy. But we should pass a budget in September instead of shutting down the government. My final point, we should pass a budget that is solutions-based, that reduces debt in a balanced way, that is fair to the middle class, protects rather than privatizes Medicare, and creates rather than costs jobs.
Let me go back.
If we can do that and cooperate, the economy will be better.
If you talk to so many people who are running businesses, so many people who are working in mid-sized companies, they'll tell you that there's a big challenge in this economy, and frankly, it's not the things we've been talking about this morning. The challenge in this economy is that there's so much uncertainty. There's a regulatory environment that keeps getting bigger and bigger. Ordinary people who are having to make business decisions day in and day out worry about the uncertainty. They worry about the fact that Washington seems to not get the fact that predictability is important. Context of Obamacare. So many families right now, so many people in the business world are worried that Obamacare is going to change the state of play for them. That makes it tough for them to hire. It makes it tough for
I
businessmen.
got 30 seconds, Anita, so really quick.
Poor Congressman Israel seems to forget that Harry Reid didn't pass a budget for 4 years, and somehow the country moved along.
True that, Anita.
But we did now, and so let's go to confidence.
And that's our problem, by the way.
You have excuses in the past. We have a
The
budget.
president is traveling to talk about a better bargain for the middle class. He's talking about what we need to do for middle-class families. And right now, the Republicans have been very busy voting for the 40th time to repeal Obamacare. I think the American people get choices, and there is a clear choice.
The idea that Washington has the answer to any of America's problems, no one believes that anymore.
Donna Brazile, Congressman Steve Israel, thank you so much for joining us. Donna, Anita, stick around. I think you're going to like this next story. I went down to New Orleans.